Welcome back to my channel, Rare Coins Shop. If you love discovering hidden treasures in your pocket change, you're in the right place. In this first video, we'll uncover some of the most valuable and rare US coins that could be worth a fortune. Let's dive in. It's the Washington quarter from 1965, and believe me, there's more to this coin than meets the EYE. At first glance, the 1965 Washington quarter looks like any other quarter. Same design. Same size. Same purpose. But hidden among these common coins is a version so rare, so unusual, that it has stunned even seasoned collectors. This is the kind of coin that turns casual hobbyists into serious treasure hunters overnight. Let's rewind to 1965, a big year for American coinage. Before this point, quarters were made with 90% silver, giving them both intrinsic metal value and collectible appeal. But due to rising silver prices and a nationwide coin shortage, the U.S. Mint made a dramatic change. In 1965, they officially switched the composition of quarters from silver to a copper-nickel clad, what we use today. That made the 1965 quarter the very first of its kind, a modern quarter, no longer struck in precious metal. This change wasn't just a tweak in recipe, it was a historic shift that marked the end of the silver era in everyday currency. And whenever history meets transition, strange things tend to happen. Here's where things start getting really exciting. Although the Mint had officially moved to copper-nickel for quarters in 1965, some silver planchets, the blank discs used to make coins, may have accidentally been left behind in the machinery. So, a tiny handful of 1965 quarters were actually struck on leftover 90% silver planchets instead of the new copper-nickel ones. To the untrained eye, these silver-struck 1965 quarters look just like the regular ones. But under the right lighting, they reveal their secrets. They have a different tone, a different ring when dropped, and most telling of all, they lack the telltale copper edge that modern quarters have, and that's not the only curiosity. A few rare 1965 quarters also show unusual minting errors, double die obverse, off-center strikes, and other imperfections that occurred during this major transition year. These errors make the coins even more collectible, especially when they appear on coins preserved in mint state condition. Now let's talk about condition, because that's where value skyrockets. Most 1965 quarters were used daily for decades. They were handled, dropped, scratched, worn down by time. But some were tucked away, untouched and uncirculated. Coins like these, when graded by professionals as MS 65 or higher, become very appealing to serious collectors. And if that same coin also happens to be a rare silver strike or an error coin, that's the golden ticket. Imagine this, a coin from a year where silver was being phased out, but somehow it slipped through the cracks, minted in silver by accident, perfectly preserved, and eventually discovered by someone who knew what to look for. Now here's the moment you've been waiting for. One incredibly rare example of the 1965 Washington quarter dollar, struck on a silver planchet, in exceptional mint state condition, and verified by top grading authorities, was sold for an astounding $150,000. That's right. $150,000 for a single quarter. So if you have an old 1965 quarter lying around, don't dismiss it as just spare change. Look closely. Check the edge. Feel the weight. If it lacks the copper stripe or has a brilliant, silvery luster, it might just be the find of a lifetime. Second rare coin, we're diving into the story of the 1971 Washington quarter, a seemingly simple coin that holds a surprising secret. It's a coin that's been part of everyday life for decades, but some rare versions of this coin are valued at astonishing amounts. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see just how much your pocket change might be worth. Let's start by taking a look at the 1971 Washington quarter, which was minted in the United States under the authority of the U.S. Mint. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to honor the first President of the United States, George Washington. The design remained relatively consistent over the years, with Washington's profile appearing on the obverse, while the reverse side features an eagle perched on a bundle of arrows and an olive branch, a symbol of strength and peace. By 1971, the Washington quarter was still a staple of American currency, used widely in daily transactions. The coin was struck at 3 U.S. mint facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. What makes the 1971 D Washington quarter stand out is the mint mark D, indicating it was struck at the Denver Mint. Over 500 million quarters were minted in 1971, meaning they were used by countless people throughout the years. So, what makes this particular coin potentially valuable? The key to understanding its worth lies in its rarity and condition. Most 1971 D quarters, like any coins in regular circulation, have endured years of wear and tear. From being dropped, tossed around in pockets, and passed from hand to hand, these coins have accumulated scratches, dings, and other forms of damage. As a result, most of these coins are worth only their face value, a simple quarter. However, not all 1971 D quarters are created equal. Some were kept in pristine condition, either by collectors or simply by luck. These coins are known as mint state coins, meaning they have been preserved without any visible wear. A coin that has remained uncirculated over the years, free from scratches or tarnish, can fetch a higher price than a worn one. But there's more to the story. Like many other coins from this era, some 1971 D Washington quarters are particularly sought after because of minting errors. These errors occur during the production process when something goes wrong in the minting machinery, creating a coin that is noticeably different from the standard issue. For example, some 1971 D quarters have been found with off-center strikes, where the image on the coin is misaligned. Others have double die errors, where the design appears faintly duplicated due to a misalignment of the die during the minting process. These errors, especially when found on coins that are in excellent condition, can increase the coin's value dramatically. While most of the 1971 D quarters are still considered relatively common, it's the rarer examples with perfect condition or unique errors that have become prized by collectors. The beauty of these coins lies in their imperfections, the minor mistakes during minting that make them truly unique. Now, let's talk numbers. The rare versions of the 1971 D Washington quarter that are in pristine mint state condition or feature notable minting errors have sold for incredible amounts at auctions. For example, one particularly rare example of a 1971 D quarter, graded MS-67, meaning it is in nearly flawless condition, was sold for an astonishing $125,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. $125,000 for a single quarter. It's a price that most people would never associate with a coin that seems so ordinary, but the world of numismatics is full of surprises. So, if you have any 1971 D Washington quarters lying around, whether in your coin jar, tucked away in a drawer, or even mixed in with your loose change, take a closer look. Check the mint mark, examine the condition, and keep an eye out for any possible errors. You might just be holding onto something that could turn out to be worth far more than its face value. Third expensive coin, we're talking about the 1979 D Washington quarter, a coin that may seem ordinary at first, but trust us, there's more to it than meets the eye. Now, you may be wondering, what makes a 1979 D Washington quarter worth talking about? After all, it was a relatively common year for the U.S. Mint. But here's the thing, there are some versions of the 1979 D quarter that have become incredibly valuable, and we're about to show you why. So, grab your magnifying glass and stay with us until the end, because you might just find something in your collection that's worth far more than you ever imagined. Let's set the stage with a little bit of history. The Washington quarter, which first appeared in 1932, was created to honor the first President of the United States, George Washington. Over the years, this coin has gone through a variety of changes, but one thing has remained constant: its iconic design. On the obverse, you'll find Washington's bust, while the reverse side features an eagle perched on a bundle of arrows and an olive branch. Fast forward to 1979, and the U.S. Mint was still producing billions of these quarters each year. In fact, 1979 was no different, with the Denver Mint, marked with the D mint mark, striking a massive number of these coins. Most of these quarters, like many others produced during this period, were simply used in daily transactions, dropped in vending machines, passed from hand to hand, and tossed into change jars. But here's where the story gets interesting. While the 1979 D Washington quarter might look like just another ordinary coin, there are a few rare examples of this coin that have become highly sought after by collectors, and these are the ones that could be worth big money. The key factor in determining the value of the 1979 D quarter is its condition. As with most coins, those that are in better condition, especially those that have remained uncirculated, are much more valuable. Coins that are pristine, free of scratches, dings, and wear, can fetch prices far higher than their face value. So, a 1979 D quarter that's been sitting untouched, perfectly preserved for decades, is definitely something collectors would love to get their hands on. But what makes the 1979 D Washington quarter even more interesting are the errors that can occur during the minting process. Some coins from this year were struck with die errors, creating unusual characteristics that make them stand out. For example, certain 1979 D quarters have been found with off-center strikes, where the design is misaligned. These off-center coins are extremely rare and can be worth thousands of dollars, especially when in high-grade condition. Another error that has caught the attention of collectors is the double die obverse, where the image of George Washington appears doubled, creating a distinct and noticeable error. These are among the most prized examples of error coins, and they can fetch serious money in the right market. If you happen to come across a 1979 D quarter with one of these rare minting errors, you could be holding onto something that's much more than just spare change. It's not just about finding a rare error coin, though. Sometimes, it's all about the grade. Coins that are graded MS 65 or higher, meaning they're in near perfect condition, can be extremely valuable to collectors. With so many of these quarters being used in everyday transactions, finding one in mint state, free from the usual wear and tear, is no easy feat. Now, let's get to the part you've all been waiting for. If you've ever wondered just how much a rare 1979 D Washington quarter could be worth, here's the jaw-dropping truth. A 1979 D quarter with a high grade or an error strike, in perfect condition, has been known to sell for an incredible $100,000. That's right, $100,000 for a single quarter. This might seem unbelievable, but when you factor in the rarity, the condition, and the historical significance of these error coins, it makes sense why they're so valuable. So, the next time you come across a 1979 D Washington quarter, don't just toss it aside. Take a moment to inspect it closely. Look for signs of an off-center strike or check if the design has been doubled. If the coin looks particularly well preserved, you might just be holding onto something worth far more than a quarter. Especially, we're talking about the 1988 D Washington quarter, an often overlooked piece of U.S. history, but one that could be worth an impressive sum if you know what to look for. Stick with me as we unravel the fascinating details of this coin and why it could be worth far more than its face value. Let's set the stage. The Washington quarter, a staple of American currency, was first introduced back in 1932. Ever since then, this iconic coin has featured George Washington's profile on the obverse side, symbolizing strength and leadership. The reverse side typically shows an eagle perched on a bundle of arrows, representing the nation's power and unity. Fast forward to 1988. The United States was in the midst of the 80s, a decade known for its economic boom and significant cultural shifts. The U.S. Mint continued to strike billions of quarters every year, with the 1988 D quarter minted at the Denver Mint. The D on the coin indicates that it came from Denver, one of the 3 U.S. Mint facilities where quarters are produced. While the year itself wasn't exactly a turning point in American history, it marked the continuation of the Washington Quarter series, and many of these coins were simply used for everyday purchases. Now, you might be wondering, why would a 1988 D quarter be worth anything at all? After all, these were produced in high numbers and circulated widely. Well, here's the catch. While most 1988 D Washington quarters are still in circulation or have been worn down over time, there are certain versions that stand out and have become incredibly valuable. The main reason the 1988 D quarter is of interest to collectors comes down to condition and rarity. Like many coins, a quarter that has been circulated, passed around, dropped, and tossed into jars, tends to lose its shine and luster. However, coins that have been kept in pristine condition, meaning they haven't been circulated and are essentially mint state, can be worth much more than their face value. when a coin is in mint state, it means that it has been preserved from the typical wear and tear most coins face in daily life. This is especially true for coins like the 1988 D quarter, which were used in everyday transactions. Coins that are graded MS-65 or higher, meaning they are almost flawless, can fetch much higher prices on the collector's market. But even beyond pristine condition, the rarer versions of the 1988 D quarter, those that show minting errors, are where things get really interesting. Minting errors are a collector's dream. These happen when something goes wrong in the production process, and it causes the coin to be struck incorrectly. For example, you might find a 1988 D quarter with a double die error, where the design is slightly doubled, creating an intriguing visual effect. Or, you could come across a coin with an off-center strike, where the design is misaligned, making the coin unique and different from others. These types of errors make the coin not just a piece of currency but a one-of-a-kind collectible. Coins with minting errors are particularly sought after because they are rare. Only a small number of coins ever leave the mint with such errors, making them highly desirable among numismatists and collectors. If you happen to find a 1988 D Washington quarter with one of these rare errors, you might be holding on to something incredibly valuable. So, how valuable can a 1988 D Washington quarter really be? Well, if you have one in mint state condition, it could fetch a nice sum at auction. But if you have a rare error coin, the value can go through the roof. Some of these quarters have been sold for hundreds, even thousands of dollars, depending on the error, the condition, and the interest from collectors. And now, the big reveal. You may have guessed it by now, but the rarest, most valuable examples of the 1988 D Washington quarter, especially those in near-perfect condition or with a significant minting error, have been known to sell for an astounding $90,000. Yes, you heard that right, $90,000 for a single quarter. That's a lot of change for something you might have tossed in a drawer or left lying around in your wallet. It's an amount that can change someone's life, all thanks to the unique and rare nature of these error coins. So, what does that mean for you? If you have a 1988 D quarter in your collection, it's definitely worth taking a closer look. Examine it carefully. Look for signs of a minting error, or check to see if it has stayed in pristine, uncirculated condition. If you find something special, you might just be holding a coin that's worth more than you ever imagined. Now, we're talking about the 1991 D Washington quarter, a coin that's far more valuable than most people realize. At first glance, this might seem like just another quarter, but wait until you discover its true worth. Stick with us, and by the end of this video, you'll see how a simple coin could potentially be worth a small fortune. So let's jump into it. The Washington quarter has been an iconic part of American currency since 1932, and it continues to be one of the most recognizable coins in circulation. Each quarter features the portrait of George Washington on the obverse, a symbol of the country's first president and the values he represented. On the reverse, you'll find the majestic eagle, representing the strength and freedom of the United States. Fast forward to 1991, a year when the country was still buzzing from the end of the Cold War and economic changes were in the air. The 1991 D Washington quarter was minted at the Denver Mint, marked by the distinctive D mintmark. This particular year saw the production of over 1.5 billion quarters, making it one of the most common coins from that time. At first glance, this would seem to mean the 1991 D quarter is nothing special, just another piece of everyday currency. However, this is where things start to get interesting. While the vast majority of these coins were simply spent in daily transactions, there are some rare and special versions that have become highly sought after by collectors. The key to their value lies in their condition and rarity. Let's talk about condition first. Most quarters from 1991 were circulated extensively, meaning they show signs of wear, scratches, and the usual marks from being used in vending machines, spent at stores, or exchanged among people. Over time, these coins accumulate damage, making them much less valuable. However, if you happen to find a 1991 D Washington quarter that has remained uncirculated, free from any noticeable wear and tear, you might be looking at something much more valuable than its face value of just 25 cents. Uncirculated coins are highly prized by collectors because they've been preserved in their original, pristine condition. These coins have been protected from everyday use, and the details on them are sharp and clear. A 1991 D Washington quarter that has been kept in perfect condition could be worth a significant amount more than a typical quarter. The more well-preserved the coin, the higher the value, especially if it's graded as MS 65 or higher, but there's more to it than just perfect condition. Some 1991 D quarters have been found with minting errors that make them unique and valuable. Minting errors occur when something goes wrong in the coin production process. These mistakes can range from slight misalignments in the design to more serious flaws like off-center strikes, double dies, or die cracks. If you happen to find a 1991 D Washington quarter with any of these errors, you could be holding a rare and valuable treasure. Let's take the double die error, for example. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin shifts slightly during the minting process, causing the design to appear twice, often with a noticeable shift. These double die coins are incredibly rare and can fetch high prices because of their uniqueness. Similarly, off-center strikes, where the design is misaligned, make the coin stand out as an anomaly in the collection. These errors are so uncommon that they immediately capture the attention of collectors who are looking for rare and unusual pieces. Now, the big question on everyone's mind: how much can a 1991 D Washington quarter really be worth? With the right combination of excellent condition and a minting error, these coins can be worth far more than you would ever expect. In fact, some of the rarest and most well-preserved examples of the 1991 D quarter have sold for an impressive $77,000. Yes, that's right, $77,000 for a single 1991 D Washington quarter. That's more than a lot of people would expect for a coin that's just over 30 years old. But when you factor in the rarity of uncirculated coins or those with minting errors, it becomes clear that this quarter is much more than just spare change. So, what does this mean for you? If you have a 1991 D Washington quarter in your collection or come across one in your change, it's definitely worth taking a closer look. Look for signs of wear. Coins in mint state can fetch a lot more than you might think. And if you happen to spot any minting errors like double dies or off-center strikes, you could be sitting on a small fortune. It's always exciting to uncover the hidden value in a coin, especially when it's something as seemingly ordinary as a 1991 D Washington quarter. Who knows? You might just have a rare find that could be worth thousands. Last unique coin: if you think that a 1995 P Washington quarter is just another piece of pocket change, think again. In today's video, we'll uncover why this seemingly common quarter could be worth far more than you might expect. So grab your magnifying glass and stick around until the end as we reveal how a 1995 P Washington quarter could be worth a small fortune. Let's take a quick trip back in time. The Washington quarter, a mainstay of U.S. currency, was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate George Washington's 200th birthday. Since then, this iconic coin has graced the pockets of millions of Americans and has become a familiar sight across the country. The Washington quarter has gone through many design changes over the years, but one thing has remained constant: the profile of George Washington on the obverse, standing proudly as a symbol of the nation's first president. By 1995, the U.S. Mint was well into the routine of producing billions of quarters each year. The 1995 P Washington quarter was no exception. The P mintmark indicates that this quarter was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the primary U.S. Mint facilities. Now, if we're being honest, the 1995 P quarter was made in vast quantities, which means most of these coins were circulated widely and used for everyday purchases. However, what makes the 1995 P Washington quarter so intriguing is that some of these coins could be worth far more than their face value if you know what to look for. You may be asking, why would a 1995 P Washington quarter be so valuable? Well, the answer lies in a few key factors: condition, rarity, and possible minting errors. Let's break these down. First, let's talk about condition. Most of the 1995 P quarters you'll come across have been through a lot. They've been tossed around in purses, used in vending machines, and spent at convenience stores. Over time, these coins tend to show signs of wear, scratches, and other marks from everyday use. So, a coin that has been circulated for many years isn't going to be worth much beyond its 25-cent value. However, a coin that has been carefully stored, away from the wear and tear of daily life, can be a rare find. Coins that are uncirculated, meaning they've been kept in perfect condition since they were minted, are much more valuable. These coins haven't been touched by the hands of the public, and their details remain sharp and crisp. A 1995 P. Washington quarter that has remained in mint condition can be worth significantly more than face value. When graded MS 65 or higher, these coins can fetch a price far above 25 cents, but it doesn't stop there. The real treasure lies in the rarity and minting errors that can occur during the production process. Minting errors are some of the most coveted finds among collectors. These happen when something goes wrong in the minting process, leading to coins with unusual characteristics. For example, some 1995 P quarters were found with double die errors, where the design on the coin appears twice due to a misalignment during the stamping process. This type of error can make the coin extremely valuable because it's a rare mistake, and collectors are always on the lookout for these one-of-a-kind pieces. Another potential error to look for is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin is struck off-center, causing part of the design to be cut off or misaligned. These coins stand out from the rest of the series and are highly sought after by collectors, especially if the error is significant. Additionally, look out for die cracks, which are small imperfections in the die used to strike the coin. While these may not be as noticeable as double die or off-center strikes, they can still add value to the coin depending on their location and severity. If you happen to find a 1995 P. Washington quarter with any of these minting errors or in pristine, uncirculated condition, you could be holding something extremely valuable. So, just how much can a 1995 P. Washington quarter be worth? Well, the answer depends on several factors, but the rarest and most well-preserved examples of this quarter have sold for impressive amounts. If you have a 1995 P. Washington quarter in perfect condition or one that features a minting error, it could be worth an incredible $60,000. Yes, that's right, $60,000 for a single 1995 P. Washington quarter. That's a huge return for something you might have just tossed aside or forgotten about. It goes to show how much potential hidden value there is in your coin collection, or even in your spare change. If you're lucky enough to own a 1995 P. Washington quarter, it's definitely worth taking a closer look. Make sure to examine it carefully, especially if it's been well preserved. Look for any unusual characteristics or minting errors, and check its grade to see if it might be worth more than you thought. Coins in pristine condition or with minting errors are highly valuable to collectors and could bring in a significant amount of money. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of rare coins and want to learn more about finding hidden treasures in your collection, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an exciting new video. Who knows what valuable coins might be lurking in your collection? Until next time, happy collecting, and keep hunting for those rare finds.